Maria's hands were black with grease when Sophia walked into the garage that afternoon, dragging her backpack across the oil-stained concrete. The little girl was 7, with her father's dark eyes and a quiet way of watching the world that made Maria's chest ache every single day. "Mama, I'm hungry." Maria wiped her hands on a rag that was already beyond saving and crouched down to meet her daughter's gaze. "I know, baby. Just let me finish this alternator and we'll heat up the soup, okay?" Sophia nodded without complaint. She never complained. That was the hardest part. The workshop had been Daniel's dream long before it became Maria's burden. He'd bought the old building with money saved from years of working double shifts, transforming the crumbling space into something alive with purpose and possibility. They were supposed to grow old here, together, raising Sophia among the smell of motor oil and the sound of engines turning over after a good repair. But cancer doesn't care about dreams. It took Daniel 2 years ago, and Maria had been holding on by her fingernails ever since. She finished the repair as the November sky darkened outside, rain beginning to tap against the metal roof like impatient fingers. Sophia sat in the corner on a worn-out chair, coloring in a notebook with crayons that were down to nubs. Maria looked at her daughter and felt the familiar weight settle across her shoulders. The weight of being both parents, of keeping this place running, of making sure Sophia never went to bed scared or hungry or alone. Business had been brutal lately. People drove to the bigger shops in town where the mechanics wore clean uniforms and the waiting room had coffee and magazines. Maria's place was just a widow and her daughter in a building that needed a new roof. She'd fixed 3 cars all month. The mortgage payment was due in a week, and she was $800 short. The storm hit harder as evening came on, turning the rain into sheets that blurred the world beyond the garage door. Maria was closing up, counting the day's earnings, $45, when headlights cut through the downpour. A big rig pulled up outside, sputtering and wheezing like a dying animal. The driver climbed down, an older man with silver hair and a tired face. He was soaked through before he even reached the door. "Ma'am, I'm real sorry to bother you," he called over the storm. "My truck just gave out. I think it's the fuel pump, but I can't see straight in this weather. Any chance you're still open?" Maria glanced at Sophia, who was already putting her crayons away, used to late nights and sudden changes in plans. Then she looked back at the stranger, at his weary eyes and the way he held himself, like a man who'd been driving too long and still had too far to go. "Pull it in," she said, hitting the button to raise the garage door. His name was Thomas, and he told her while she worked that he was trying to get home to Pennsylvania before Thanksgiving. His daughter was expecting him, first grandchild on the way. He spoke about it with the kind of careful hope that comes from knowing how quickly everything can disappear. Maria understood that feeling in her bones. The fuel pump was shot, just like he'd thought. She had a replacement in her sparse inventory, a lucky break that almost never happened anymore. She worked for over an hour, her hands steady and sure, even as exhaustion pulled at her. Sophia fell asleep on the chair, wrapped in Daniel's old jacket that still smelled faintly of him if you pressed your face close enough. When Maria finished, Thomas reached for his wallet. She saw him counting bills, saw his face tighten when he realized he was short. "How much do I owe you?" he asked quietly. Maria wiped her hands again, looked at her sleeping daughter, thought about Daniel and all the times strangers had helped them when they needed it most. She thought about what kind of person she wanted Sophia to grow up to be. "Just get home safe," Maria said. "Your daughter's waiting." Thomas stared at her. "Ma'am, I can't." "You can and you will. It's Thanksgiving week. Consider it a gift." She smiled, and it felt like the first real smile she'd managed in months. "Go meet that grandchild." The old man's eyes went bright with something that might have been tears. He gripped her hand, his calloused palm pressing against hers. "Thank you," he whispered. "You don't know what this means." But Maria thought maybe she did. The weeks that followed were the same grinding struggle they'd always been. Maria fixed what cars came her way, stretched every dollar until it screamed, and tried to figure out how to keep the bank from taking the only home Sophia had ever known. She lay awake at night, doing math that never added up, making plans that always fell short. Then, one Tuesday morning in early December, a delivery truck pulled up outside the garage. The driver knocked on the door with a clipboard in hand. "Maria Torres?" "That's me. I've got a delivery for you. Gonna need you to sign here." Maria signed, confused, and watched as the driver opened the back of the truck. Two more men appeared and began unloading equipment. Professional-grade tools, a hydraulic lift, diagnostic computers, an air compressor that looked like it cost more than her truck, box after box of parts and supplies, all of it brand new, still wrapped in plastic and possibility. "There must be some mistake," Maria said, her voice barely working. "No mistake, ma'am. It's all paid for. There's a letter for you, too." Her hands shook as she opened the envelope. The letter was handwritten in careful, slanted script. "Dear Maria, you probably don't remember me, just another driver broken down in a storm. But I remember you. I remember your kindness when you had every reason to turn me away. I remember watching you work with your daughter sleeping nearby, and I remembered my own son. I lost him 3 years ago. He was a mechanic, too. Loved it, the way I think your husband must have loved it. After he died, I sold my company and retired, but I couldn't figure out what to do with all the money that suddenly meant nothing. Then I met you, and I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time, someone fighting with everything they had, not for themselves, but for the people they loved. These tools belonged to my son. I've been keeping them in storage, unable to let them go, but unable to use them either. I think he'd want them in the hands of someone like you, someone who understands what it means to build something that matters. You didn't just fix my truck that night. You reminded me that kindness still exists, even when the world feels dark. I hope these tools help you build the future you deserve. Thomas Brennan." Maria read the letter 3 times before she could see through her tears. Sophia came running from the back room where she'd been playing and stopped short at the sight of all the equipment. "Mama, what's all this?" Maria pulled her daughter close, buried her face in Sophia's hair, and let herself cry. Not from sadness this time, but from the overwhelming weight of unexpected grace. The new equipment transformed everything. Word spread about the garage with the professional-grade tools and the mechanic who could diagnose problems the big shops missed. Customers started coming back. Maria hired an assistant, then another. She paid off the mortgage and started making repairs to the building. A new roof, fresh paint, a proper waiting area with heat and comfortable chairs. 6 months later, Maria did something she'd never thought possible. She bought a house. A real house, with a yard and a bedroom for Sophia that wasn't attached to a garage. It was small and needed work, but it was theirs. The night they moved in, Sophia ran through the empty rooms, her laughter echoing off bare walls, and Maria stood in the doorway feeling like she could finally breathe. But she never forgot where they came from. The garage became more than just a business. It became a place where people knew they'd be treated fairly, where young mechanics could learn the trade, where single mothers and struggling families could get honest work at honest prices. Maria started teaching a class twice a week, showing teenagers how to change oil and replace brake pads, talking to them about perseverance and integrity, and showing up even when it hurt. She told them about Daniel. She told them about Thomas. She told them that one act of kindness could change everything. A year after the delivery truck had appeared, Thomas came back. Maria saw his rental car pull up, and she dropped her wrench, running out to meet him. "I wanted to see it," he said, gesturing at the transformed garage, at the sign she'd had made that read Torres and Daughter Automotive. "I wanted to see what you built." They stood together in the afternoon sun, watching mechanics work under lifts that gleamed, listening to the healthy sound of a business that was finally, truly thriving. "I don't know how to thank you," Maria said softly. Thomas shook his head. "You already did. That night in the storm, when you could have turned me away. When you chose kindness, even though it cost you something." He paused, his voice thick. "You gave me something to believe in again." Maria thought about Daniel and all he'd left behind. Not just the garage, but the example of how to live with purpose. She thought about Sophia, growing up strong and confident in a home that was safe and warm. She thought about the kids she taught every week, learning that good work and good character still mattered. "One moment," she said, almost to herself. "One choice. That's all it takes." "That's all it takes," Thomas agreed. As he drove away, Maria returned to the garage where Sophia was helping organize tools, humming while she worked. The late afternoon light poured through the windows Daniel had installed, casting everything in gold. Outside, a new customer pulled in, engine knocking, hope in their eyes. Maria wiped her hands clean and walked forward to meet them. She'd learned something Daniel had always known, that the work you do with your hands can change your life, but the kindness you do with your heart can change the world. One engine at a time, one person at a time, one moment of grace at a time. And that was enough. That was everything.